topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello, Bill Martinez here. Good to have you with us. And I'm excited to share with you our two guests. Both are authors in their own right and celebrated speakers, very gifted so. The first one is Bill Federer, the American Minute creator. We love Bill Federer for all his knowledge of history, his American Minute that is released daily is probably some of the best history lessons that you'll get in minutes. That's how good he is in presenting it. And we're going to have a chance to talk turkey with Bill. I mean, it's hard to believe it's already Thanksgiving, huh? How fast this has gone. It's so unbelievable. But, you're going to be surprised at how many things we don't know about this holiday and how many things, just aren't true. So Bill's going to clean up the record for us. Like, for example, you may have heard this story before, is that, our early founders, the Pilgrims, when they came here with this great American idea, which was an answer to prayer, something like 12, 13 years of ardent prayer and seeking God, that they would have a land where they could go to, because where they were being persecuted, and they wanted to freely, have religious observance and worship of Almighty God. And God answered that prayer, and Bill will share more about that. And then after we finish talking with Bill Federer, then we're going to transition to my good friend, who is an Amazon top-selling author. He's one of the 60 best-selling authors on Amazon, senior pastor at Hickory Hammock Church in Florida. He's a former decorated law enforcement officer. And we're going to have a little bit of fun with Carl Gallups. Carl and I have been talking about having an opportunity where we could, kind of reverse role here. And so he's going to interview me and, talk to me about what's on my mind. And we're going to talk about the election and the role that people of faith played. I mean, it's pretty dramatic. I mean, when you look at these numbers, basically you can see where Christians, people of faith, kind of saved the country. And, for some people, that might be a little bit hard for them to understand. But the numbers are the numbers. And this comes to us by way of the George Barna Research Group out of Arizona. So right now, let's bring my good friend, Bill Federer, on. He's in the studio, and we'll bring him on the show right now. Hey, Bill, how you doing? Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Well, happy Thanksgiving to you, Bill. Great to be with you.
Hey, I'm so excited to talk about it, as I was sharing with the audience. I mean, here you are. You're the historian par excellence. And schools love you. Teachers love you. They love getting the American Minute. We're reminded, for those of us who are historian buffs in any part of the spectrum, appreciate maybe anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes of reading to remind us of the rich history of this great country of ours.
Well, it is rich. Matter of fact, I do a Turning Point Academy 5-minute video every week as well. But a book I put together, it's called The Treacherous World of the 16th Century and How the Pilgrims Escaped It. And I love to give the background. And so for those not familiar, you had the Ottoman Empire, the Muslims, and they were conquering North Africa, conquering the Eastern Mediterranean, and invading into Europe. And the person stopping them was the King of Spain. In the middle of all this, the Reformation starts. And so for decades, the King of Spain tries to stop both the Islamic invasion and the Reformation. And then he captures the King of France, Francis I. And after a couple concessions, he lets him go. And so Francis I goes over to the Sultan and makes the Franco-Ottoman Treaty that lasts for about 3 centuries. And so you always have France helping the Turks. It's like, oh, great. And so now the King of Spain is really in a bind. And so he makes a deal with the Protestants. It's called the Peace of Augsburg of 1555. And it lets every king decide what's going to be believed in his kingdom. What the king believes, the kingdom believes.
Mhm.
And so it worked. They worked together, stopped the Islamic invasion, but in the next century, different kings believed different things. And so Northern Germany and Sweden were Lutheran, Switzerland, Calvinist, Scotland, Presbyterian, Holland, Dutch Reformed, and England, Anglican, and Italy, Spain, France, Austria, Poland stayed Catholic. But if you didn't believe the way your king did, you were persecuted and you fled.
Oh, yeah.
Muslims keep invading, and they're stopped at the Battle of Lepanto, 1571, biggest battle on the Mediterranean. But unfortunately, rather than the King of Spain freeing up the rest of the Mediterranean from Ottoman control, he sends the Iron Duke of Alba to Antwerp, Holland, Belgium in 1572, and he kills 10,000 Dutch Reformed. And then sends his armada to England in 1588. And Queen Elizabeth rallies the nation, Sir Francis Drake, and a hurricane smashes the Spanish Armada. And so you have this situation where you have to believe the way your king does. And Elizabeth is tolerant, but King James is not.
Mhm.
And King James decides that you have to belong to the Anglican Church or you were canceled. You would lose your job. So the Puritans were inside the Anglican Church trying to purify it, but the Pilgrims were separatists and they separated themselves. And they were arrested, put in jail. The king's attitude was you have to read your prayers from the Book of Common Prayer. And if you're caught making up your own prayers, that's illegal. And they would drag you before the Star Chamber. It's a room that had stars on the ceiling and sort of a J6 hearing room, right? And no witnesses allowed.
It's almost like we're back to Nebuchadnezzar, right?
Yeah.
Meshach, Abednego, and Belteshazzar, right? You can't do anything outside of the king's command.
Yeah, John Bunyan spent 12 years in jail because he was caught having a Bible study that wasn't approved. And so that was the setting. Some pilgrims decide to flee to the Netherlands. The Netherlands were 7 provinces who spent 80 years breaking away from Spain. And these provinces did not always believe the same thing, so they were willing to work together. And so they were tolerant. And so the Netherlands was the most tolerant place in all of Europe. Pilgrims decide they're going to flee there. One group sells their property, goes down to the port, and right before the ship takes off, the captain robs them, turns them over to the police, they're put in jail. Another group of these pilgrim separatists arrange for a Dutch ship to sail up the coast of England, but the pilgrims show up a day early. And the waves are big and the kids are getting sick. And so the women say, can we just wait on the shore with the kids?
Yeah.
And so the boat shows up and the men row out, stow all their stuff, but somebody snitched. The police come over the hill and capture the women and children. And the Dutch captain says, I don't have an army with me. And he pulls anchor and sails away with the men. For 2 years, they pass these women and children from one court in England to another. Finally, they get them out of their hair. They put them on a boat and send them over to the Netherlands. After 12 years, the pilgrims decide to flee again because Spain's going to attack. And they were thinking of going to Guyana, South America, because they heard of the perpetual spring. But then they said, well, we don't want to go anywhere which is close to the Spanish Main because the Spanish butchered the French Protestant Huguenot settlement in Jacksonville, Florida in 1565.
Bill, let me interrupt you real quick, only to remind everybody, we're talking with Bill Federer. He is the American Minute creator and laying down the foundation of Thanksgiving and why after this, you're going to realize why we need to be that much more grateful and thankful, right, for this great American idea that God has given us, right, Bill Federer?
Right. So the Pilgrims decide they were going to go to Virginia. Now, Virginia was founded in 1584. Sir Walter Raleigh, he named it after the Virgin Queen Elizabeth. But when the Spanish Armada was invading England, they neglected the colony for half a dozen years. And when they finally went back, it's gone. It's called the Lost Colony. And Sir Walter Raleigh lost 30,000 pounds sterling. Personally, he was financing it and it's gone. So nobody wanted to finance another trip to the New World. But then you had companies and you had the British East India Company and then the Virginia Company, which financed Jamestown. And then there's the Massachusetts Company, which financed the Pilgrims. And so the Pilgrims were going to originally go to Virginia. They get blown off course and they try sailing south and almost sink. So the captain says it's too dangerous, and he goes back to Plymouth Rock and says, off the boat. The Pilgrims say, well, we have a question. Who's going to be in charge? We were going to go to Virginia and submit to the king's government, but there's no king appointed person in our little group, 102 of us, and nobody's appointed by the king. They do something unique. It's called the Mayflower Compact. They take their covenant church form of government and they make it their civil government. And we, in the presence of God, covenant ourselves together into a civil body politic, a church group turning itself into a political group. And this is a polarity change in the flow of power on planet Earth. Instead of top-down rule by kings, it's bottom-up rule by just the 102 of us.
Wow. Yeah.
And this became the model for the New England colonies and eventually our federal government. And the word federal is Latin for covenant. And so that's why we look to the Pilgrims as the origin of self-government in America. And now they're little.
And for them, it was a process, Bill, right? It wasn't like they had it all down perfect. The first couple of years, they experimented with government and how to govern themselves. And they had a bit of a socialistic mindset initially, right?
Right. So they were a company project. And so the company had bylaws, and the bylaws said everything would be owned in common. Everything got by cooking, hunting, fishing, trading shall go into ye common stock, and everyone's livelihood shall come out of ye common stock. And they tried it and almost starved to death. William Bradford said the idea of this communistic plan of life, that the owning and possession of things in community would somehow make men happy, as if they were wiser than God. He says the young man objected to having to do twice as much work as the old guy, but got paid the same. The old guy thought it was some indignity to be classed in labor with the young guy. And as for men's wives who were obliged to do service for other men, such as cooking and washing their clothes, etc., they considered it a kind of slavery, and many husbands would not brook it or allow it. And so it almost fell apart. And then William Bradford said, well, to not go through another winter of want, of lack, the decision was made to have each man plant corn for his own household. This made all hands more industrious. The women now went willingly into the field to plant corn with their little children, whereas before they would allege weakness, and to have compelled them would have been thought of great oppression. So they tried this community of property, they scrapped it, and they gave everybody their own property, and then they were motivated to go out and work really hard.
And they flourished.
They did.
They were fruitful and multiplied. Imagine that. They did what God called them to do.
And we can't talk about the Pilgrims without Squanto. So half the Pilgrims died the first winter. Only 4 wives survived out of 15. 15 died. They had 4 were still alive. So in the spring, you had about 50 Pilgrims, and into the camp comes an Indian speaking to them in perfect English. His name's Squanto. It's like, whoa, tell us his story. So the Pilgrims were religious, but other people weren't. And you had pirates, and you had a century of Spanish gold from, Potosi silver mines out in Inca, Peru. And you had gold going through Portobello, Panama to Havana, Cuba, then back over to Spain. And you had French pirates like Leclerc, Pegleg. I mean, he had 100 ships in his pirate fleet. I mean, the Caribbean was crawling with pirates. You had Dutch pirates and you had English pirates like Captain Morgan, Henry Morgan. And so there was this Captain Thomas Hunt, and he went along the coast and would lure Indians on board and then say, hey, you want to see below deck? And they would say, okay. And then they would lock them below deck and then sail to Malaga, Spain, and sell them into slavery. The Muslims controlled Spain for 700 years and sold over 1 million Europeans into slavery. The Spaniards drove them out, but the slave trading city of Malaga continued. And so when word got out that they were selling Native Americans, the Christian monks, made a big stink over it and got them freed. And then they took them in and then let them go. So Squanto hitchhikes his way across Europe and then goes to England. And then he learns English, works a lot of odd jobs for about a dozen years. And then he finds some merchant fishing expedition to Newfoundland and hitches a ride as an interpreter. And then they finally drop him off. at his Patuxent Indian land at Cape Cod, only to find out everybody's dead.
Wow.
What? Well, lo and behold, a French ship had shipwrecked at Cape Cod 3 years earlier. The sailors got ashore, but they must have had some illness and that wiped out the tribe. So in a backwards sense, had Squanto not been kidnapped, he most certainly would have died in that plague.
Exactly.
But it had to be depressing, and he's living with the neighboring Wampanoag tribe. And the spring of 1621, you can just imagine his Indian friend coming in his teepee and saying, "Hey, Squant, you wouldn't believe it. There's a bunch of English people wanting to start a settlement on your old stomping ground." And so here's Squanto. He wanders into the camp of the Pilgrims.
Bill,
And
we got 3 minutes left, but this is fascinating. I love this. Go ahead.
yeah, you can just imagine. He says, "Oh, you guys from London? Yeah, I used to live there. Oh yeah, St. Paul's Chapel. Oh yeah, the pub on Wharf Street. I mean, and then this place, I grew up here like the back of my hand. I know it over the hills of Spring." And he taught them how to catch fish. And they said, "We tried." He goes, "No, these are salmon. They spawn in a week. This river will be packed in April." And so he teaches them how to catch salmon. And then he says, "Plant corn." They said, "We tried." He goes, "No, you got to put a fish in the hole with the corn kernel and it'll decompose and fertilize it." And then he taught them how to take the corn and put it in a pot, shake it over a fire, make popcorn. Taught them how to go in the mud by the riverbanks and squeegee and catch eels and clams. And then he taught them how to tap at a tree for maple syrup. And then William Bradford said, "Neither was there a man among them who'd ever seen a beaver skin till instructed by Squanto." It took 40 years of beaver skins to pay off their debt. One of their boats in 1625 got captured by the Muslim pirates taken to Morocco, sold into slavery. But most importantly, Squanto was their interpreter, put them on good terms. So Chief Massasoit came for the first Thanksgiving with 90 Indian braves. And there was only 50 pilgrims. The first Thanksgiving, there were twice as many Indians as there were pilgrims. And at the end of the day, they roll up in their blankets and they wake up. The second day, they're still there. Thanksgiving goes on for 2 days. End of the day, they roll up in their blankets and they wake up. They're still there. So the first Thanksgiving went on for 3 days.
Yeah.
And
see, that turkey meat will knock you out.
And one story, Massasoit got sick, and the one pilgrim, Edward Winslow, doctors him up and he recovers, and they make a peace that lasts over 50 years. Now, the fine print is, if you doctor an Indian chief and the chief dies, you die.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty serious if you're going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And then finally, Squanto dies. William Bradford said they were exploring the bay, caught in a freezing storm. They couldn't find shelter. They're shivering. And here Squanto fell ill of Indian fever, bleeding much at the nose, which the Indians take for a symptom of death. And he begged Governor Bradford to pray for him that he would go to the Englishman's God in heaven.
Wow.
Well, the Englishman's God. Well, these pilgrims were Christians, and they were serious Christians because they were willing to go across the ocean. And he witnessed it, and he goes, I want to go to your God. So I believe that he was saved. But it's a fascinating, fascinating story. I put it all in this book. It's called The Treacherous World of the 16th Century and How the Pilgrims Escaped It. And gives us new appreciation.
Federer, as we wrap things up, remind everybody how they can participate and subscribe to the American Minute.
Oh, thank you. My website is AmericanMinute.com, AmericanMinute.com.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen, my good friend Bill Federer from AmericanMinute.com, the noted speaker. He's all over the place because I have to always track him down. Fortunately, I have his cell number, so I get a chance to connect with him and bring him on. Bill, happy Thanksgiving to you and Susie and the family. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Bill. Same to you and Mona and all the viewers.
You got it. Bill Federer, my good friend. That is awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have Carl Gallups joining us in just a moment. But before Carl gets on, I want to share with you that this portion of Bill Martinez Live is being brought to you by the top-rated precious metals company, Goldco. Now, listen to this great offer. If you've got $50,000 or more saved for retirement, this is just for you right now. For my audience, you can qualify for up to a 10% instant match in bonus silver just for diversifying your life savings. That easy. This special offer is only available while supplies last. It's a special offer from my newest partner, Goldco. All you have to do is go to the goldconservative.com. You got that down? Don't forget the adjective article, okay, thegoldconservative.com. Request your free 2025 gold and silver kit. It is jam-packed, let me tell you, with helpful information. Plus, you're going to find out if you qualify for that 10% instant match and bonus silver. So be sure and check it out. That is the goldconservative.com, thegoldconservative.com. Well, we are in expectation of my good friend. Yes, and he will still be my good friend, even though we will wait patiently for him to join us. And you know why, once you get a chance. And if you haven't heard Carl Gallups before, he's such a joy. So he's definitely well worth the wait. When we consider this election that we just experienced, Americans of faith, once again, basically, as Bill laid out, the impact of Christian faith in the early foundings and the beginnings of this great American idea. Well, Americans of faith once again saved America from the brink in a bit of a role reversal. The prophecy expert, critically acclaimed Amazon top 60 best-selling author, senior pastor at Hickory Hammock Church in Florida, and former decorated law enforcement officer. We're going to give him the lead microphone. So he gets to ask the questions, and I got to come up with some brilliant answers. Okay, so pray for me. And we'll talk about the latest election results, the role people of faith played to save America, and the effect on other nations, especially Israel. So as we continue to hold tight for Carl Gallups, I will share some early numbers here as we wait for Carl. This was incredible. This is approximately among the approximately 75 million votes that Donald Trump garnered in the election. More than 3/4 of them, that is to say 78%, came from the Christian community. You got that? Over 3/4 came from the Christian community. And this is, one of the things that we were looking for, is if America was going to be saved. Of course, let's put it in perspective here in terms of what was going on, with our country, and how people were of faith had generally just traditionally just said, look, I'm going to let God handle it. I don't need to vote. But the rallying cry went out to people of faith saying, look, you must get involved because of what we're dealing with. And of course, the last 4 years gave everybody concrete evidence of the dangers that, we were dealing with here. With sex changes for kids, boys playing in girls' sports. Forget about Title IX that we were championing for many years and celebrating. All of a sudden, that goes by the wayside. It was no wonder. We were told by a Supreme Court justice before she was confirmed that she didn't know what the definition of a woman was. Well, here we are. Is this part and parcel of the narrative and what got us to the situation that we were in, that we would think that, that somehow, we would be confused as to the definition of a woman. So all these things were not positive portents, I would say, for our country and the American people. Well, Carl Gallups is in the green room, so we're going to bring him out front and center right now. Carl, of course, as I mentioned, he is the celebrated author, top 60 Amazon author and pastor. And we're going to give him the lead microphone so he gets to interview me, because this is something that we've been talking about that would be fun to do. Hey, Carl, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing great, Bill. Listen, for those watching this, thank you so much for tuning in. And Bill Martinez, great friend of mine, great broadcaster, been in the business, 40-something years, Bill?
Something like that, but I stopped counting.
Yeah, I know. Syndicated, et cetera, et cetera. But listen, I know that you're a believer and that you are right in sync with what's happening in the world around us and how that ties to biblical prophecy and elections and politics and how all of that ties ultimately to the Word of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so, listen, let me just ask you a couple of questions. First of all, just talk to us about your thoughts on the influence of the church, of people who claim to be Christians in this election in the United States.
Well, according to George Barna, my good friend out of Arizona, the professor there, who is not associated with Barna Research anymore, but they're independent and involved with Arizona Christian University. And what they came, Carl, this is amazing, really. When you look at the numbers, basically you could say without qualification that the people of faith saved this country. Let me give you self-identified Christians, according to the information and the research from Barna Research. That self-identified Christians represent 68% of the population. Okay, 72%, they overperformed. 72% actually turned out, which was, kind of out of characteristic, because as you know, Christians generally, you only get about 50% of people in the church that bother to register to vote. And of that, only 50% of that 50% actually goes out to vote. But they did overperform this time around. The thing was interesting that I found is that 56%, and I would say only 56%, voted for Trump, 43% for Harris. And the reason I say that, Carl, because I got to tell you, I was mystified, and not only say mystified, but maybe a bit upset, because there was 2 days prior, you might remember, Kamala Harris had chased away two Christian men when she was talking about abortion. They had shouted glorifying Christ, and she said, "Bye-bye, you're not welcome here." In other words, Jesus isn't welcome here. So you need to go to that smaller, rally down the road, so to speak. Kind of an insult. But regardless, God will not be mocked. But the thing that upset me was about 2 days later, she was invited to a Black Christian church. And I thought, this was my thought. I go, wait a minute, help me out here. Here's a woman who's promoting abortion that is responsible for killing 40% of Black babies. And she's invited to a Black church. I mean, that would be like having Adolf Hitler at a Jewish temple, would it not?
Really? Yeah.
I don't get it. I just don't get it. I was astounded by that. But yet here it is with these numbers. That's why when I say only 56% voted for Trump, 43% for Harris, how can people of faith who say they believe in God support any party that promotes abortion?
Yeah. Bill, I'm sorry. I'm hearing what you're saying, but it's really the video is really choppy, so it's really difficult for me to keep up with where you're headed.
Right. Well, and I apologize for any kind of technical difficulty, and it must be tough for our audience as well, because I am making a statement, handing it back to you, and we're just not connecting for whatever reason, and I don't understand. But these anomalies occur with technology. Maybe because maybe I need to call Elon Musk and he'll send us a Starlink and we get this resolved. What do you think?
Yeah. Bill, I hate to say this, but it's almost impossible to do this. There's a huge gap. There's a lot of delays. I can barely make heads or tails of what you're saying at this point. It's like it's getting worse.
Yeah, let's do this in all fairness, and we'll have we'll have to reconnect, you and I, on another day and time, because this is important, and I want to be able to address and get have our exchange. And I believe, and I don't want to frustrate you and frustrate our audience. So
yeah, I know. Listen, okay, good deal. I look forward to that, because yes, I want to hear what you have to say. I've got so many things to ask you, so many things to talk about, and it's just going to be impossible today. And I'm so very sorry to do this to you and your audience, but it is what it is right now.
It is. And sometimes it's always best, you just need to cut your losses. So that's what we'll do right now. Carl Gallups, thank you. And this will be continued at another time.
Nope.
And I appreciate you, my friend. Take care. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, if you can get that much.
Look forward to it. Same to you, brother. God bless.
You take care. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the technical difficulty. It happens, from time to time, but not much we can do about it other than, as Carl graciously bowed out on this. But to give you some more information on, the response here. For example, in the denominations, Catholics overperformed. They're 16% of the population, and 23% of Catholics turned out. And so that was the higher performance. Protestants, 37%, and they overperformed it as well at 41%. 60% of Protestants voted for Trump, 39% for Kamala Harris. Evangelical church attendees overperformed as well. So 12% of the population of 18 plus, okay? When I talk about percentage of population, this is the number that we're talking about. And 14% actually turned out. 64% of evangelical church attendees voted for Trump, 34% for Harris, okay? And Pentecostal church attendees, 74% voted for Trump, only 26% voted for Harris. Let me adherent of a non-Christian faith. This is where things turn a little bit, and you can understand. Okay, they participate in non-Christian faith here. 48% voted for Trump, 50% for Harris. So it starts to tilt there. No religious faith. 35% voted for Trump. 64% voted for Harris. So clearly, it's easy to discern that people of faith played a critical role in the results of this election. I think we would all agree. Now, Democrats, it's interesting. I've been saying this for a number of years. In fact, I thought that what happened in 2024 would happen in 2020, and by that I mean that the Democratic Party would be derailed, and it's. And looking at everything, this is, of course, pre-COVID. As I'm looking at it on a forecast, I'm going, this is unsustainable. Their policies, the gravitas of the party was disassembling, but somehow they were able to survive. Now, I know there's lots of discussion and argument, and I'm not going to debate, the election results, because that unfortunately is a rabbit hole, because mainstream media, the powers to be, have declared it so. They don't want to discuss it. They don't want us to know what's going on. I mean, the fact that you have factual evidence about things, you had over 1,000 sworn affidavits of people saying there's some funky, suspicious stuff going on in these particularly swing states, in Pennsylvania especially, but go right on down the line, that all of a sudden we would, Trump, by the time you went to bed, Trump was up by hundreds of thousands of votes. Suddenly you wake up and now the tables have turned and you go, what the heck happened? And then, oh yeah, you found out that everybody shut down counting all at the same time. Well, how is that not? I mean, common sense would just tell you that you could deduce that this was somehow orchestrated. But you have a government that got the results they wanted, and they didn't want to hear anything. They didn't want to hear the complaints of we the people saying, wait a minute, we need to look into this. So their idea of looking into it was they wanted to adjudicate what happened on January 6th, not the prequel to January 6th, which I don't know how you can separate those, because what happened in November begat January 6th. But the Democrats and the powers to be disassociated those, and we were given a narrative. And I don't know when. It could be decades before we actually get down to it, kind of like in the same way that in the 1960 election. Today, Democrats will so casually say, well, if the truth be known, Richard Nixon actually won the presidential election of 1960. but for some shenanigans that took place in Illinois and a couple other places, that's how JFK became the president over Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon didn't complain. He just went away and then ended up going to become governor of California, and then came back and was able to be elected president, as everybody knows. But the point here is that election fraud has taken place forever. It's not been just something in recent memory. This has been going on for hundreds of years. And regardless of a former attorney general, Eric Holder, who says, well, election fraud is non-existent, it just doesn't exist. I mean, it's like, what medication are you on? I mean, people are getting arrested, they're going to jail for voter fraud, but he says it doesn't exist. Come on, let's not fool ourselves. But we need to get serious, and I think that there were some real strong movements, and the movement came from the Republican Party, who finally woke up and said, look, for the sake of the electorate, if we're going to protect the integrity of the elections, then we need to make sure that we counterbalance the shenanigans of the Democrats, and you got to put it at their doorstep. I don't think there's this idea, well, both sides do it as if it mollifies it. No, you got to call it for what it is. The Democrats, they cheat, okay, and they've been doing this, and they're actually they've gotten it's become an art of voter fraud and cheating, and they're very good. They're like I say, they're 10-degree black belts, and in cheating, and the Republicans just allowed them to do it. It's like my good friend, Dr. John Zemerick with stream.org. He says the Republican Party were the Washington Generals. If you remember, the Washington Generals was the team that played against the Harlem Globetrotters, and their job was to lose. And, you couldn't win. You just go out there, you put on a show, and you lose graciously time after time to the Harlem Globetrotters. And the Republican Party became the Washington Generals. I think John had nailed it right. They just kind of accepted that, okay, they're going to be the party at the little table. Speaking of Thanksgiving, they're going to be the party at the little table all the time because that's their lot. Well, something happened, and I should say someone happened, and that is Donald J. Trump happened, and he turned over the apple cart and everybody's idea of the Republican Party and what it should be. And all under this great brand. I think it's a great brand, MAGA, because what I like about MAGA is there's no reference to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. It's about America and Americans. And this is why I believe one of the reasons why people were so attracted to, in a sense, a nonpartisan label like MAGA. It's like, okay, make America great again. Who doesn't want America to be great again? Because if America is great again, that means Americans are great and they're able to achieve their highest aspiration. In fact, we saw this happen in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected. I saw it then and I said, look, at what Donald Trump is unleashing is the productive human potential of everyday citizens. And what do they want? They just want a job. They want to go out there, work hard, be rewarded based on merit, and make money, realize their dreams, provide for their families. I mean, who doesn't want that? I think that's pretty much a universal aspiration for all Americans. And so I guess the people got tired of winning and decided that they should elect Joe Biden, which is, for me personally, it remains a head scratcher. But hey, as they say, it is what it is. But we got a reprieve, ladies and gentlemen. And the American people said, okay, enough of all this, enough of this he, she, them, all these pronouns, with all due respect. Look, if you want a pronoun, have a pronoun. But you don't need to use your pronoun to beat me over the head and limit my ability to be the best I can be, to be the best version of myself. Pronoun or no pronoun, just a humanoid, just like you. I want the best for you. Hopefully you want the best for me. And hopefully that's the kind of America that we live in. And so Donald Trump, once again, has been given this grand opportunity to unleash this human potential. Now you watch what's going to happen over the next 4 years. You're going to watch an explosion of small businesses and ideas. I mean, here we are on the brink of all this technology of AI and everything is getting, I mean, this frontier that we're about to embark on. And you cannot go through this frontier if you are going to be shackled and limited in the expression of your, of your abilities, your God-given abilities. And again, you got to go back to where does freedom come from? It doesn't come from Donald Trump, doesn't come from Joe Biden, Republican Party or Democratic Party. It didn't even come from our Constitution. Our Constitution, it acknowledged that our freedom, the inalienable rights, it didn't come from any political party, it came from God himself. So anything that impedes a God-given assignment is flat out sinful and evil. Okay. And here we are as American people given this golden opportunity to go out there and be the best we can be. I think it's awesome. I just cannot wait to see us unleashed. And I think just like what happened in 2016, people were at the gates getting ready to explode. And this is what's going to go on. Because remember when Trump was elected, one of the things that I had, whenever I had an opportunity to talk with the Peter Navarros and some of the inner circle of the president at the time, I said, is he really, is this the real deal? Because in my own heart, my father and I used to talk about this, that our country needed a businessman, a real chief executive officer to run our government, because the bureaucracy and all this stuff that's going on. And of course, we got Doge coming into play. So this is going to be quite the reveal, because, the model that we're operating out of is so inefficient and incompetent. And this is what we've gotten to. And the American people said, you know what? Yeah, I've seen this for years and I can't handle this anymore. So we're going to trust Donald Trump. So a lot is on this man's shoulders. And I hope we're not being unrealistic with it, with this expectation that we have on him, kind of like what we did with Barack Obama. We elected Barack Obama and said, oh my gosh, here we are, the first Black president, civil rights issues, civil unrest, all this is going to be taken care of. And that was our idea. I don't think it was Barack Obama's idea. And he couldn't do it. And I would say that if Barack Obama, had he been able to bring the disparate sides together and really cipher through all this racial divide and this race baiting and identity politics and everything like that, and really united the country, he'd have been forever one of the greatest. He would have truly, he had said going into office that he wanted to be an Abraham Lincoln figure. And he could very well have been. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, didn't have the capacity, maybe outside influences, whatever. And I know many of us were disappointed. But that's that was our unrealistic expectation. I don't put that on Barack Obama. I could only hope and pray that that's what would have happened, but it didn't. But ironically enough, here's a white guy, a gazillionaire from New York, and he's the one that really just crashed everything. He crashed this identity politics, he, she, them, all the pronouns, all this stuff going on. And Elon Musk, his participation in X, and to where we could actually have a conversation. I feel like we were being canceled at every turn. You think about it. You got so many people to be thankful for, leadership there, but also the other people who came alongside, podcasters, certain people in the media that were promoting liberty in the media, freedom in the liberty and freedom in the media, because that's our core. And that's how we can be the best version of ourselves, is being able to have a conversation. Maybe some conversations are hard to have. I get it. I'm not saying, look, we're all, all singing out of the same hymn book together, but I love the diversity of our country. I do. I love that. The challenge is can we not get in the way of diversity and be able to embrace it in such a way so that everybody can be the better version of themselves, and that we can all participate in that. It's like I was blessed for about 5 years to work with an organization in Los Angeles, Salem Communications. And one of the things I shared with the group that I was blessed to manage was that we had to be vulnerable enough with one another to where we could match up strengths and weaknesses. See if this makes sense to you. So what it was with the team of 12, each person had something of strength, discernible strength that they brought to the team. And they also had weaknesses. But as I shared with everybody, I don't care if it was me or anyone, we all have weaknesses. And guess what? Everybody knows it. We're not fooling anybody. We all have weaknesses. So I'm saying, look, get over it. Okay. We're going to be vulnerable enough to where your strength against my weakness makes me a better manager. My strength against your weakness makes you a more effective marketing professional, right? And I can tell you, the proof's in the pudding. 5 years working together when I first got there, I don't think there's one person in the context of sales, okay, I'll give you a number, was not making six figures. And when I left 5 years later, 8 of the 12 were making six figures. They were doing really, really well. And this is how we built the team. We supported one another, strengths and weaknesses. And so herein is I share that with you. And hopefully there's some application in your own personal life, because that dynamic I found to work even in families. We're not fooling anybody. The kids know mom and dad's weak points. Are you kidding me? They know exactly where to go. And but again, they just don't have the maturity to be able to talk that through. But as adults, especially when you are fearless and you trust in God Almighty for your identity and your peace, then you can have these conversations with one another. Huh? How cool is that? Anyway, I'm looking forward to these coming years. And I agree with Donald Trump, frankly, that America is about ready to embark on a new golden age that is going to be a blessing for all concerned. And, I want that for everybody. I want that for everyone in our audience, for you to be the best version of yourself. But we got to get government out of the way and these impediments that have been blocking our ability, whether it's government regulation, government interference, these sort of things. I mean, the last 4 years have been brutal, economically speaking. I know there's some people, especially those in the Beltway, because they make a lot of money. That's the number one zip code because they live off the government. They live off our taxes. Okay, and they don't understand. What's wrong with these people over flyover country? Why are they complaining? They're complaining because it's not working. They're complaining because as Joe Scarborough realized, $7 for butter is just too much. Even though he was shocked, he was $7. It was amazing. $7 for butter, didn't get it. But here we are. We've been living with that, and our credit card debt nationally has gone up to $1.5 trillion. Brought to you by the Biden-Harris administration, by our government. And so Donald Trump, he'll do what he did in 2016. He's going to clear out these regulations and get ready. As he said, it's time to dream big. The government looks like the way he's running this, and with the people he's selected for his cabinet and for those to carry out his vision, these are people that are going to get the blockades out of the way, so that you can realize and dream big once again. That's what we want for all Americans. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate your time. For more information on the show, you can check it out, BillMartinezLive.com. And don't forget to support our sponsor, thegoldconservative.com, thegoldconservative.com. Have a great day.